So I recently sat down and rewatched the entirety of the Avatar series, both The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra. Both are amazing works in their own rights with some of the best characters, fight choreography, animation, world building, and magic systems I've ever seen. I'd say that pretty much 90% of everyone who's ever seen The Last Airbender would say that it's one of the best animated series of all time. But the thing is, I like Korra better.
Are you sure about that?
I know, it's blasphemy. You can go ahead and link that one 90-minute Lily Orchard rant about how Korra is objectively inferior to the original series. And honestly, I agree with about 80% of what's being said in that video. I agree how this is stupid, how that's dumb. I also think Mako is one of the worst characters to have ever existed, and how Korra definitely has some flaws that can be a bit jarring to get past for some people. And while I love The Last Airbender, there are two things that I'm particularly interested in that make Korra just a little bit better for me. World building and philosophy.
But bad opinion, senpai. Both of those things are literally everywhere in the original series.
Yes, that's correct, but what I'm talking about is slightly nuanced. So when I say world building, I don't just mean going full Tolkien and creating a world complete with different countries, races, working languages, and enough lore to make a whole YouTube channel out of. The kind of world building I like is when we've established what's fantastic or magical about a world, and then thinking about how these things would affect society and everyday life. This is one of the reasons why Black Mirror is one of my favorite shows. The anthology is often futuristic, but not so futuristic that it alienates its audience. Whether it be the ability to record and rewatch memories or upload yourself into a virtual world, the show takes these concepts and then shows us what everyday life would be like in such a world. I find these grounded, or should I say earthbended, approaches to fantasy and sci-fi super interesting. Due to the series mostly taking place in Republic City, we get lots of these flavor moments where we see how the effects of the previous series and bending in general affect everyday life. Lightning bending is electricity? Yep.
Are you tired of living under the tyranny of benders? For too long, the bending elite of this city have forced non-benders to live as lower-class citizens.
This guy actually brings up a point that I used to think about a lot in the original series. In a world where a good chunk of the population has literal magic powers, how do non-benders feel about benders? What kind of elitism is there? What kind of power differential is there? And how do non-benders feel about that? Obviously in Korra we get the answer to this in the form of Amon and the Equalists. And this actually brings me to Korra's second strong point, philosophy. So yeah, the original Avatar had a metric ton of philosophy. Honestly, Uncle Iroh alone probably defined half of my personal philosophy. But Ozai's goal in the original series was to conquer the world, and his motivation was power. Typical villain stuff. Granted, we didn't really need Ozai to be this super deep and complex character for him to work due to the nature of the series, but all things considered, he's still pretty one-dimensional, albeit a very well-written one-dimensional character. This is in stark contrast to all the villains in Korra. Everyone knew that Ozai was evil and needed to be stopped, but this wasn't always so cut and dry in Korra. Aban wanted equality for all. Unalaq wanted to restore the spirits and release the spirit of darkness to become a dark avatar and then release 10,000 years of darkness on the world. Zahir didn't believe any single person should have the kind of power the Avatar does, and Kuvira was trying to help the people of the Earth Kingdom. Each of these villains, other than Amon, whom Korra just kind of forgets about after book 1, has Korra make a decision about what's better for the world, and more importantly, why these decisions are better for the world. Now, I will admit that there was a lot of wasted potential with each of these villains and how they handled their so-called moral ambiguity, with Unalaq, in my opinion, being the worst offender of this idea. He was such an interesting character, being a spiritual master who wanted nothing more than to bring the spirits into harmony, until he threw all that out the window to become a giant glowing Dragon Ball Z kaiju monster, for some reason. Even still, Aang never really had to deal with these sorts of questions because the answers to them were obvious from the start. The only morality he ever struggled with was killing someone as a pacifist, but that was more of an internal struggle with himself and his friends rather than against Ozai. But yeah, I find the subject matter of Korra to be super interesting, and for that reason I usually prefer it over the original series. But please don't get me wrong, I love the original Avatar series. If The Last Airbender is a 9, Korra's like a 9.2 at best for me, even with all its flaws. The Last Airbender is probably better for everyone, but The Legend of Korra is definitely better for me.
Ready?
Iroh shouldn't have appeared in Legend of Korra. Tales of Ba Sing Se is the best episode in both shows. I consider the Avatar series a demi-anime. Mako was a terrible person in seasons 1 and 2. Lava Bending Bolin is the strongest member of New Team Avatar. Unalaq had absolutely no reason to start a civil war. Zuko should have ended up with this girl. Amon had no good reason to attack Republic City. Unalaq had even less of a reason to attack Republic City. Kuvira didn't need to attack Republic City. Suyin was absolutely in the wrong for almost all of season 4. Opal is annoying. She's also Bolin's worst love interest.